The Conjuring is an American horror film released in 2013. This film tells the story of a couple of paranormal investigators who were investigating families plagued by evil spirits. "28 Days Later" is a British horror film released in 2002. The film tells the story of a bicycle creator who awakens from a coma and finds his city in a zombie apocalypse. Nosferatu is a German horror film released in 1922. This film tells the story of a nightmarish terror that engulfs the city of Wisburg as a vampire arrives. Rec is a Spanish horror film released in 2007. This film tells the story of a journalist and cameraman who are faced with a vicious disease that turns humans into zombies. Deep Red is an Italian horror film released in 1975. This film tells the story of a group of people who are trying to unravel a murder mystery. Inside is a French horror film released in 2007. This film tells the story of a woman in the third trimester of her pregnancy who is stalked by a stranger who is obsessed with her unborn baby. Goodnight Mommy is an Austrian horror film released in 2014. This film tells the story of a pair of twins who find out the truth about their mother, who comes home with a bandage-covered face after undergoing facial surgery. V is a Russian horror film released in 1967. This film tells the story of a young priest who is ordered to lead the revival of witches in a small church in a remote village and spends 3 nights alone with a corpse, with only the belief to protect it. Let the Right One In is a Swedish horror film released in 2008. This film tells the story of a neglected and bullied boy who finds his love for a beautiful but strange girl who turns out to be a vampire. Dabbe, Curse of the Jinn, is a Turkish horror film released in 2013. This film tells the story of the healing of a housewife who is cursed by a creature named Jinn. Zibakana is a Pakistani horror film released in 2007. This film tells the story of a group of teenagers traveling to a concert who met a family of meat-hungry psychopaths. Tombud is an Indian horror film released in 2018. This film tells the story of a family who wants to get rich by worshipping a creature named Hasur, which instead makes them suffer consequences. The Eye is a Chinese horror film released in 2002. This film tells the story of a blind girl who gets a cornea transplant so she can see again, but she tells the story of a person who moves into an old house and is haunted by mysterious ghosts. Train to Busan is a Korean horror film released in 2016. This film tells the story of a father and his daughter who are going to Busan by train, but they are trapped by a zombie outbreak. Un is a Vietnamese horror film released in 2015. This film tells the story of a woman who is depressed because of her father's death and can't stop mourning him. Shudder is a Thai horror film released in 2004. This film tells the story of a newlywed couple who find a ghost in their photos after they bump into a girl. Munafik is a Malaysian horror film released in 2016. This film tells the story of a Muslim medical practitioner who is unable to carry out his job due to the death of his wife. Feng Shui is a Filipino horror film released in 2004. This film tells the story of a Feng Shui amulet that originally brought good luck but instead brought a death curse on a family. Satan's Slaves is an Indonesian horror film released in 2017. This film tells the story of a mother who has died due to a strange disease but then comes back to haunt her family and wants to bring them to hell with her. The Babadook is an Australian horror film released in 2014. This film tells the story of an imaginative mother and child who get a scary terror when reading a mysterious fairy tale book entitled Mr. Babadook. Terrified is an Argentinian horror film released in 2017. This film tells the story of a doctor who is investigating strange events that occur in the Buenos Aires neighborhood. At Midnight I'll Take Your Soul is a Brazilian horror film released in 1964. This film tells the story of a man who has a wife who cannot have children and is suspected of being involved in a murder that takes place in a small town. The Silent House is an Uruguayan horror film released in 2011. This film tells the story of a woman who is trapped in a secluded house and experiences a series of terrible terrors that occur in and around the house.